Okay. Okay. Our computers have been running really slow at the high school. I'm not sure why. Can everybody see the slideshow at home? Yep. Okay. And you guys can hear me okay? Hopefully, yes. Yeah. I can move my little, well, no, that's not going to matter because I'm going to stand up. Okay. So we've been talking about demand. And now we're going to talk about supply. And why I say it's a little complicated because they don't seem like they should work. Because one of them goes in one direction and one of them goes in the complete opposite direction. And yet they do. And they measure a lot of the same things. And some of the concepts we're going to talk about, like what are causes? What is elasticity of supply? Those terms are going to seem very similar to you, but it's important to make sure at least you have in your notes, because if you don't have it memorized, I get it. If by the end of this section you guys at least understand what demand is and what supply is, we're good. But the terms overlap, but yet they're different. So it'll be good to have the notes. Like I said, for you guys that are here face to face, I can print out copies for you. And for you guys at home, feel free to print out or use, when you're taking quizzes and tests, feel free to use any resources that you have. All right, so this has been up the last couple days. Nothing's changed. The quiz is up online for chapter 4. If you guys can get it done by Monday, that would be great. So it's formative, but I would really like for you all to do it. Also, you can take it as many times as you want. So it's an easy formative grade to get an A on, because you can just take it until you get all the answers right. All right. So what are the basic differences between supply and demand? So when I'm supplying something, what am I doing? Don't read that yet. When somebody is supplying something, what are they doing? Let's think real basic. If a parental figure is supplying dinner, what are they doing? They're giving it to you, or they're making it for you, or they're buying it for you. But basically, you are receiving a product, right? So supply is that opposite end. Demand, we've been talking more about what the consumer wants and what the consumer needs. Supply, you're talking more about the opposite side. So who is giving those products to the consumers that demand it? That's one of the differences. So supply is the amount of product that would be produced, grown, or acquired and offered for sale at all possible prices that could prevail in the market. So supply is basically all the products in the market that can be supplied to the consumers at every single price. So we're going to look at those charts and graphs a little bit, so I think it makes it a little bit more clear that way. Sometimes factors influence production. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to read this and just think about it, and then we'll talk about it in class, and hopefully I can get some responses. So suppose an economics class project, your job is to obtain a custom logo t-shirt for every member of your class. So we're going to create a class for econ, or a t-shirt for econ. What you need to do is you need to get a price for that first. Okay, so because you want to get the best possible price, you plan to make inquiries, meet with suppliers, and finally ask for bids. You're going to ask for quotes at 3 different price levels, but you want the same quality shirt to be supplied at each price. You haven't done the work yet, and you only have a $1,000 budget. But the more you think about it, the more you think that you can predict the outcome. Okay, so let's just put that into clear English. This was in your book. So if you want to get some t-shirts made for either, for a class, for the Learning Center, wherever, for your job, and let's say you have to get, let's say it's all the econ students in the grade, which there's probably about 170 juniors. So juniors and seniors that are taking the class. So let's say we need to get, let's just make it an easy number. Let's say we need to have 200 t-shirts. What's the first thing we're going to do? Find out how much it costs and where. Right? So where would we look? And let's make it easier. Let's make it 100 t-shirts for $1,000, because we know we can get t-shirts for $10, right? Where would we look? Do you guys know places in town? I know, Jessica, I know you just moved here, so you probably don't know a lot of places. Kylie, do you know? So I'll throw out a few. So we could look in town at Heartland Graphics. There's a place called Heartland Graphics, and they make t-shirt designs, right? Do you guys online know of anywhere else in the area that makes t-shirts?
There's like a place over by the Slice Center.
Yep. I forget what that's called. But you're right. There's one over there. And then let's just say, for the sake of whatever, we look on Amazon, because you can actually get custom t-shirts on Amazon. So the first thing we're going to look at is probably those different price points. Where can we get it the cheapest? But then we also need to look at the quality, right? Because we don't want to get a t-shirt where the logo is going to like peel off within the first washing, right? So those are all things that suppliers offer to you guys, the consumers. Can you charge a little bit better price for a better quality product? Yeah, absolutely. Why can you sometimes get shirts for $2 on Amazon? Because chances are they're coming over from overseas. They're poorly made. The stitching will come out, or the logo will come out. So those are all things that we want to look at. But once again, you are the consumers looking at that. The suppliers also need to be conscious. So if you're Heartland Graphics and the other place by the Slice is selling the same product, the same quality, they're going to need to have a price point that's real similar, right? Because what if they don't? Competition is going to make your consumers, the ones demanding products, go somewhere else. Okay. That all makes sense to you guys, right? I know the first time I taught this class, I was so confused. So I completely understand when kids get confused when you're looking at supply and demand. But if you think of at a very basic level, when you're talking about demand, you're talking about the consumers who are us. And when you're talking about supply, you're talking about suppliers who are businesses that supply products or goods or services. It makes it a little bit easier. Now, it's obviously a bit more complicated than that, but for me, that's how I think of it in my head so that I can understand. Businesses can also be consumers, right? If you own Heartland Graphics, do they make the t-shirts there? No, they have to get them from somewhere else too. But for the simplicity of this section, suppliers are the people supplying products, goods, and services. Okay, so a couple definitions. Once again, I will print this out for you guys in class. It'll be on the review sheet. And for you guys at home, make sure you get the definitions down in writing somewhere, because that's going to be important to have. Supply is the amount of product offered for sale at all possible prices in the market. So how many t-shirts can be sold for every possible price? You don't have to know that. I'm not asking that. I'm just saying that that's what supply is. The law of supply states that the more product will be offered for sale at higher prices and lower prices. You're like, what? We just said demand, the less something costs, the more people are going to buy. So how can the law of supply say that the more product offered, they'll be selling it at higher prices? So let me just show you. Okay. According to the law of supply, is the relationship between price and quantity direct or indirect? And it's just like demand, it's direct, right? So quantity supplied. Okay. If prices are high, I'm just reading the second sentence there. Suppliers will offer greater quantities for sale. If prices are low, they'll offer smaller quantities. Which it seems weird when we just talked about demand and it seemed the opposite. But when you're a producer and you're selling something, so let's say you own, Jessica, I'm going to pick on you because I know you're thinking about cosmetology and maybe owning your own shop someday. So if you're a producer and you can charge $50 for a haircut, I'm just going to use that as a random even number, right? You can charge $50 for a haircut. And store number X next door is only charging $10 for a haircut. Who's going to be able to offer the better overall product? Probably the $50 person. You're going to get a little more out of it. Like I do spend a little bit of money. I go to Studio 906 in town when I get my haircut, because it's not just a haircut. They do wash my hair, and there's a head massage, and they style it, and they do the whole thing. When my husband goes to Cost Cutters to get his haircut, he's in and out in 15 minutes, right? I don't know where you guys get your haircut, but there is definitely a difference. When you sell things at a higher price, you can offer more things because you're making more money. So when you're looking at this and going, how is that right? That's the way to think of it, I think, guys, is that because you're able to make more income from each sale, you're able to offer more things. If you're not making as much income, you can't offer as many things. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, supply curves and supply schedules. The next slide is going to show you examples of these. So those curves are just what it looks like. A schedule is the chart with the numbers, and then the curve. Let's just go to the next one. So the supply schedule and individual supply curves show both the quantity supplied at every possible price for a certain time period. Notice that a change in the quantity supplied appears as a movement along the curve. So the demand curve looked opposite, right? So for you guys online, if you remember the demand curve, it went this way. It went down. The supply curve goes up because we're not looking at the consumer. We're looking at the producer at this point. So charging $9 or charging $1 a piece, the person producing isn't going to make any money and they can't offer that product. If they charge $2 a piece, they can produce 2 of something. The more they charge, the more that the producer can make, meaning that they can offer more product because they're making more income. So if you think about it that way, does it make sense? Yeah, okay. Like I said, I know this is a little complicated because I remember being in your spot. I had not taken the economics class the first time I taught econ here at the high school, because I'd never had to teach it before. I hadn't had economics since I was in college, and I had it like my second year in college. I didn't remember anything at all. And so not only did I have to like learn the material, but I had to teach it to students. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So you guys are in a better place than like, because I was like, and nobody was here to teach it to me. And I didn't want to ask like my coworkers because I felt stupid. Like, I'm supposed to be teaching this. I'm supposed to know this stuff. And I had no idea. So if you guys have questions or you get to the test on this and you're like, I have no idea, you need to ask me. And you guys online, if you're taking a test, like we'll take it during class time. So if you have questions, you can pop on and ask me questions. But if you have a question and you're not quite done with it during class, don't feel like you need to finish the test. Like email me, text me, whatever way you want to get a hold of me, and I can try and help explain things to you. I'm saying this because I know this is one of the trickier tests. Okay, market supply. Remember, the last one we looked at was individuals. Market supply takes in everything. So when you're looking at the market for something, you're looking at every single product in the market right now and what the prices are, and they combine it all together and get this market supply curve. So this would be the market curve shows the quantity supplied by all firms that offer the product for sale in a market. It's created by adding together all the individual supply firms. So I know we had talked about burritos for the last one. I mean, this would be taking all the people that produce burritos, how much it costs, and then combining them all together and coming up with this supply curve. So just know that market and individual supply curves. Individual, you're looking at one place. Market would be looking at all the places. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm not standing. For people at home, I want to be able to kind of do this. Okay, here's another confusing thing. Change in quantity supplied. This refers to the quantity of product offered for sale in response to a change in price. Change in supply is just saying that different amounts are offered for sale at each and every possible price in the market, and it shows a shift in the curve. This is looking at a single outside factor. This is looking at the entire market. Does that make sense? Once again, it's a little confusing, and if you're all confused, it's okay. It's okay to be confused. I promise on the test, I'm not going to try to trick you. I'm going to try and be very straightforward, and I will use the book, but a lot of times I'll add little explanations. I did that on the quiz for a couple of questions where I put like little explanations or like I added like an example, because otherwise to me it was super confusing. But you add an example and it starts to make a little bit more sense. So I promise to do that on the test. A change in supply means that suppliers will supply different quantities of product at the same price. So if we're looking here, a decrease in supply, an increase in supply. And you can just look at, these are different supply schedules combined together. And there's more of this, like if this is like really super confusing, I would read this section in your book too. But I promise you not to try and confuse you on quizzes or tests. I'm going to try and be as straightforward as possible using examples that make sense in your own heads. Okay, I'm going to bring this one up. And you guys online, if you do want to bring this up, you should be able, that clicking on that link should bring it up for you. So the global economy. Colombia is a key producer of coffee beans around the world. Do you guys know that? A lot of our coffee in America comes from Colombia, especially cheap coffee. Even as coffee consumption and resulting coffee imports have risen in the US, the production of Colombia's coffee has also changed in recent decades. The graph at the right, which is really hard to see, shows Colombian coffee production and compares it to United States coffee beans and prices. Okay, so here's on the left is Colombian coffee production. And I'm not sure, I might pull that up here so I can. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so Colombian coffee production and US coffee prices. So what this is showing that as Colombian, sorry, you guys at home can't see that. As the production of coffee in Colombia has increased, what's happened to the prices in America? It's increased also, right? So nowadays, everybody knows what Starbucks is, right? Everybody knows Dunkin' has really good coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, actually I think Quick Trip has pretty good coffee. More people are actually drinking coffee in America than we used to. Also, when it used to just be like a kind of a breakfast drink, now kids buy it for lunch. I see people, when we have open campus, I see kids coming back from Dunkin' at lunch or McDonald's at lunch with their big coffee or iced coffees. More people buying coffee has actually driven up the prices. You would think that it wouldn't. And when you're thinking just individual, like small, what's happening here in Monroe on this given date, you might see that decrease. But when you're thinking globally, when more people are buying something, producers are able to charge more money. Does that make sense to you guys? So if more people want it, more people are going to buy it, producers can raise that money a little bit and make a little bit more money. Does that make sense? Do you guys have questions? Please ask me. Yes, Joe.
Isn't Colombia one of the largest producers of bananas too?
Yes, I think it is. And Venezuela also, I think. Yes. Banana prices haven't changed as much. Why is that? Why do you guys think that is?
It's the same.
It's the same. Yeah, good. So people aren't really buying more bananas today than they used to buy 20 years ago. So that's a really good question, Joe. So Joe just asked, isn't Colombia also one of the biggest producers of bananas? Yep, true fact. But banana prices really haven't changed. They hover around 50 cents a pound. You can get them cheaper sometimes. They're a little bit more expensive sometimes. But it's not like coffee. Like it used to be like you go to the restaurant and you pay $1 for a cup of coffee. Well, now you can go to Starbucks and spend upwards of $8 on one cup of coffee. So the demand for coffee has gone up, which would push the supply. People are producing more and they can charge more. Does that make sense? Does that make sense why it's kind of opposite? All right. If you guys have any questions, please holler, because I know it's a little bit confusing. Okay. And then I have one video, or actually I have one more slide to show you. That wasn't it. Oh, here it is. Okay. I don't have this one in the slideshow. This is just, and this is in your online book. A blizzard kills and buries cows. In 2013, an estimated 2,000 cattle died in South Dakota when an unexpected blizzard blew in. A loss of supply of that magnitude had huge financial implications for both the producers as well as the consumers of beef. What would you expect would happen to the cost of beef? It's going to go up. Why?
Because there's less.
There's less of it, but people are still demanding it. Also, in order to produce more cows, what are these cattle people going to have to do? I mean, they're going to have to buy more cattle, right? So, yeah, you'd think it should bring the price down because there's less, but no, you guys are absolutely right in saying that's going to push the price up, even though the supply went down. This is once again where supply and demand are working together. Okay, and then there's a video that I want to show, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the election. So just bear with me. I've got to find it and pull it up here. If I can find it. Oh no, that wasn't.
That happened during quarantine too.
Yes. Don't worry about the video. Joe said that happened during quarantine too. So what happened?
The meat prices skyrocketed.
Meat prices skyrocketed. Why did that happen?
Because the meat industry had to shut down a lot of their factories.
Yes. So Joe said that the prices of meat went up during COVID at certain points in time. Because some of the factories that produce large amounts of meat, wasn't Purdue Chicken one of them? One of the big chicken manufacturers was one of them. I don't remember what brand it was, but they had to shut down their entire processing plant because a bunch of their employees got COVID. Now, granted, we know that when they were shut down, they were probably not shut down forever, but it was probably a month. And I don't even know how much chicken we eat in America, but we eat a lot of chicken in America. So that's going to push the price up too. Okay, good. That's the last slide I have. Do you guys have questions on that? Okay, like I said, I'm breaking this first unit or lesson into two because the next thing they talk about is elasticity and why the price and supply changes. And I thought, I wanted you to just get this to set in first, the law of supply itself, and then we'll talk about that stuff tomorrow. I am going to bring up, I have no idea where it's at right now, and I just want to bring up the Georgia elections and talk a little bit about what that means to you guys. I know there's two huge things going on today in the government. Okay. So, first of all, we had an election in November, right? And we've all heard about the controversy surrounding that with supposed voter fraud, but there's been over 50 cases filed and there's been no evidence of significant voter fraud. Does it happen? Yes, it does. But what the evidence shows is it happens on a small scale. You're talking maybe 100 or so votes per state, which isn't going to influence a presidential election. Now, let's look at Georgia. So 98% are reporting. If you look at the numbers here, 11, they're only separated by about 17,000 votes. In 2000, it was the year Al Gore ran for president. I don't remember what year it was. The votes that separated the president, who was going to win, it came down to the state of Florida, and it came down to hundreds of votes. And they did a recount there. I think they did it twice to make sure that everything was legit and legal, and Bush won that presidency. He won it legally, even though there were challenges. Of course, it didn't take 2 months of challenges. But when you're looking at this election, the most important thing about this election is it's for senators. Do you guys remember from government? Because I think you all have government, right? Joe, did you have government with me? Did you have U.S. government yet?
No.
You'll have that with me. So do you remember, Joss, or anybody online? Because I know some of you guys had government. How many senators do we have? Do you guys know? 2 from each state, right? And you guys at home can jump in. So we have 100 senators, right? When Congress goes to vote, in order to pass legislation, they have to have a majority. So they have to have 51 votes, right? So it could be 50-50, correct? So there could be 50 senators that vote no on a legislation and 50 that vote yes. These 2 senators are going to determine if we're going to have 50. Right now we have 50 Democratic because they're saying that that Mr. Warnock, he's a minister, has won and he's Democrat. So right now we have 49 Democrat senators and 50 Republican senators. If the Republican wins, David Perdue wins, there will be 51 Republican senators, which means that they'll have the majority in the Senate. And so that they won't, like, if they want to stop legislation from passing, all of them just need to vote. If this gentleman wins, if John Ossoff wins, there will be 50-50 split. And do you guys know, Jess, do you remember, does anybody online remember who breaks a tie if there's a tie in Congress? Who is the president of Congress, or of the Senate? Do you remember? Anybody online remember? Mitch, did you have government? Rachel, I know you had government. Amy, I know you had government. Nobody remembers? Okay. So if there's a tiebreaker, the vice president of the United States breaks the tie. Who's going to be our vice president? Anybody?
Kamala Harris.
Yes, Kamala Harris. And she is a Democrat. So if this gentleman wins and there was a tie in Congress, a person of the Democrat Party will get to make the deciding vote. If this gentleman wins, the Republicans will have a 51-49 majority in Congress. And so if they're all voting as Republicans, they can block legislation before it happens. So this is a huge election because it basically, whoever wins this seat, their party is going to control Congress or control the Senate. So do you see why that's kind of a big deal? The other thing going on today, and if any of you have been following it all, the Electoral College certification is happening today in Congress. And basically what they do is, so when you look at the Electoral College, and if you don't remember this from your class, that's okay. When we vote for our president, let me just bring up a picture. Oops, not 20. So each state gets a specific number of Electoral College votes. Each state has to certify those votes. And you guys, I'm sure if you watch the news at all or were on any social media over the past 2 months, have seen that there have been challenges to the Electoral College votes, correct? Each state has, not each state, but some of the states have had lawsuits against them, including Wisconsin, to make sure that what happened during the vote was legal. Everything that the courts have found is that it has been legal. There have been a few things along the way. I know in Georgia yesterday, they made sure that people could watch the vote counting from a close enough distance so that they could see the votes. Normally, that's never been a problem because why has it been a problem this year of people watching the vote counting? COVID, yeah, because of COVID. Like there's supposed to be that 6-foot distance or whatever. So a judge actually came in yesterday and said, yeah, Republican and Democrat people that certify the votes have to have access to be able to see the tables where people are counting the votes. And I think that's fair and legitimate. So those kinds of things went through, and then they looked at voter fraud. They haven't found significant voter fraud anywhere. And they looked at mail-in ballots. That was a big thing this year because so many people mailed in their ballots. They just wanted to make sure that it was all done legally. Anyway, these are the totals, 306 to 232. So today in Congress, what is happening, and if you click on any of these, 20 minutes ago, I don't know what's happening. I haven't looked at this since like this morning at like 6 in the morning. So what happens is the current vice president, so Mike Pence, goes through every single state, every single one of these states, and he reads out he reads out all 535 votes out loud to say who certified which votes in which states. All right, so normally this is procedural, meaning it happens, it goes through, it's done, Biden would be president. What's happening today is there are some people that are, I don't know what's happening with the internet today. Yeah, let's look at the Washington Post. That's a pretty neutral site. There are some Republicans that are questioning the votes that are being read. And they have every right, it's a democratic process to do that. And what they're allowed to do then is no, I don't want to subscribe. Okay, I guess I'm not going to that page. Go back here. What happens then in Congress is that those senators or congressmen that are opposed to what happens, so like maybe they still think there's voter fraud, they can challenge it. Then what happens is every time they make a challenge, for each state that they challenge, they can argue for 2 hours, and then it goes to vote again. So then Congress actually votes to see if they're going to certify that state. So let's say Wisconsin's being challenged. I think we have 12. We have 10 Congress votes and 2 Senate. So we have 10. We have 10 total. So let's say they're challenging Wisconsin's 10 votes. What they'll do is they'll debate it for 2 hours, and then it goes back to Congress for another vote. So I know for you guys, you're probably like, oh, this is so boring. But for me, like as a government teacher and somebody that's like really invested in government, I'm like, oh my God, this is our democratic process at work. This is our Congress people like using their democratic right to challenge these votes in Congress. Like,
I rise to
okay.